I was standing in my own kitchen holding a warm cup of chamomile tea when I heard it. The whisper, not from a person, but from the baby monitor. It wasn't even turned on, or so I thought. She's just so loud. Every morning, she clinks those dishes like she's announcing a parade. It was my daughter-in-law's voice, calm and sharp, like a knife gliding through cold butter. I froze. That monitor was for my grandson's room, but here it was, sitting on the hallway counter, turned toward the living room where I usually had my tea, read my books, and watched the sunrise. "She doesn't even realize how exhausting it is," she said. Honestly, I wish she'd just go stay somewhere else for a while. The words hit harder than they should have. I had lived in that house for 27 years, raised my son there, tended to the garden with hands that bore every season's story. It wasn't just a house, it was my sanctuary, a place I built with my late husband. When my son and his wife needed help after losing their apartment, I didn't hesitate to open my doors. I never expected gratitude, but I never imagined resentment. Later that evening, when my son came home, I looked at him and asked gently, "Am I too loud?" He looked confused, then embarrassed. I saw it in his eyes, he knew, and he hadn't said anything. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan, listening to its steady, indifferent hum. The next morning, I packed a suitcase, just one. I left them breakfast on the table as always and wrote a note that simply said, "You won't have to worry about the noise anymore." But here's the thing, the house wasn't in my son's name or his wife's, not yet. The deed was still in my name. They didn't know that, and what started as a gesture of love turned into something far more disturbing. My name is Ellen Whitaker. I'm 68 years old, born and raised in San Luis Obispo, California. I was a teacher for over 30 years, mostly fourth grade. If there's one thing I've learned about people, it's that they reveal themselves most when they think no one's listening. I've always been the kind of woman who makes too much food and worries too much about other people. After my husband David passed away 8 years ago, the silence in the house stretched longer each day. Grief is a quiet thing. It doesn't scream. It hums low and constant like the sound of the fridge at midnight. I filled the quiet with small joys, pruning the roses, knitting blankets I didn't need, volunteering at the library on Tuesdays. I still set the table for two, even when I knew no one was coming. Some habits aren't meant to be broken. My son Adam was my only child, a sweet boy who grew into a quiet, responsible man. He met Claire in college, smart, driven, and always perfectly put together. I respected her for that. She was organized, polite, and carried herself with a kind of polished confidence I never quite had. They got married young, and for a few years, we saw each other on holidays. I never wanted to be the overbearing mother-in-law. I gave them space, even when I missed my son more. Then I could say out loud. Then the pandemic hit. They lost their jobs and with it their apartment. When Adam called me, his voice was tight with worry. I didn't hesitate. "Come stay with me," I said. "There's plenty of room." And there was. My house wasn't grand, but it was homey. 3 bedrooms, a sunlit kitchen, and a little patio where David and I used to drink coffee every morning. It had a soul, our soul. At first, having them around filled the space that had been so hollow for so long. The sound of footsteps in the hall, the clink of dishes, even the occasional argument. It was life, messy real life. I felt needed again. I baked more, made family dinners, even turned the guest room into a nursery when they announced they were expecting. When baby Liam was born, I cried harder than I did at my own wedding. Holding that tiny boy in my arms felt like redemption, like life was giving me one more beautiful thing after so much loss. I offered to help with night feedings, diaper runs, rocking him to sleep so they could rest. It was exhausting, but I didn't mind. This was family. This was love. Claire, for her part, seemed grateful at first. She thanked me often, always smiling through tired eyes. "You're a lifesaver, Ellen," she said once, placing a hand on mine. But over time, something shifted. Subtle at first, miss thank yous, shorter conversations, a kind of invisible wall. I told myself she was just tired. New motherhood is hard, I knew that. Then came the comments, light, offhanded but pointed. She's up early again. She rearranged the pantry. I can't find anything. She always insists on doing the dishes. It's fine, I'll just redo them later. Little things said in passing, but they piled up like dust in corners you don't notice until the sunlight hits just right. Adam stayed quiet, always quiet. He'd smile and change the subject or kiss my cheek and say, "You're doing too much again, Mom. You should relax." But relaxing never came easy to me. I showed love through doing. That's just who I am. The tension grew in invisible threads, not fights, never fights, just space, emotional distance, like they were tenants and I was a housekeeper who lingered too long. One Sunday morning, I overheard Claire on the phone. She was pacing the patio, not realizing I was in the garden. She means well, but it's constant, the humming, the clattering, the unsolicited advice. I can't breathe. My heart sank. I'd always thought I was helping. I thought I was being the mother and grandmother they needed. I didn't realize I was becoming a burden. Still, I said nothing. Pride is a funny thing. It can keep you quiet even when your heart is breaking. Then came the night I heard the monitor. "She's just so loud." That was the moment everything snapped. That sentence rang louder than any scream. It wasn't about dishes or humming. It wasn't even about space. It was about how they saw me not as a pillar of their family, but as an inconvenient echo from the past, someone they tolerated out of obligation. And maybe that was my fault. I gave everything and never. I asked for anything back. Not respect, not space, not even acknowledgement. I'd let myself become invisible in my own home. But there was one thing I hadn't given up. The house. They assumed it was theirs, that because they lived in it, they owned it. They didn't know that I had quietly paid off the mortgage after David died, that I had the deed tucked in a lockbox in my closet, still in my name. I hadn't even told Adam. I thought one day I'd gift it to him formally. I imagined handing it to him in an envelope with pride and tears. But now I saw things differently. They didn't want me. They wanted what I had built. That realization hurt more than anything. I had given them everything I had left, my time, my energy, my heart. But I wasn't going to give them my home. Not anymore. After I left that breakfast note, "You won't have to worry about the noise anymore," I didn't actually leave right away. Not fully. I drove to a friend's house on the other side of town, stayed the night, and told her I just needed a little break. I didn't mention the monitor or Claire's whispering judgment. I didn't want to sound bitter or dramatic. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Something didn't sit right. It wasn't just the words, it was the ease with which they were said, like it wasn't new, like this had been talked about before. The next morning, I went back to the house. I said I forgot my medication. Claire answered the door. Her smile was tight, not quite reaching her eyes. "Oh, hi. We didn't expect you back so soon." There was a pause, a silence where a normal person might say, "Come in." I brushed past her gently. "I won't be long." The house felt different. Not messy or broken, just rearranged. The throw pillows I'd kept in the same place for 10 years were stacked neatly in a basket. My teapot was gone from the stove. The curtains were pulled tight, no sunlight, no breeze, just still air. My room, or what had been my room, was locked. I stood there for a long moment, hand resting on the knob. Locked. It was never locked, not once in all the years I'd lived there. The last time it was locked was when David kept his Christmas presents hidden in the closet. That was 15 years ago. I walked back to the kitchen and asked, as casually as I could, "Did someone lock the guest room?" Claire looked up from her phone. "Oh, did we? Sorry, Liam was playing in there earlier, just child-proofing things." But her voice was too fast, too polished. "Child-proofing a guest room?" I said, half laughing. "That's a new one." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Later that week, I called Adam and said I'd be coming by to pick up some winter clothes I'd forgotten. He sounded hesitant. Sure, Claire might be out, but I'll be here. When I arrived, the front door was wide open. I stepped inside quietly. There were voices upstairs, not angry but hushed, urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard my name twice. I stood there, heart thudding, unsure whether to call out or just turn around. Then footsteps. Claire came down the stairs. She stopped when she saw me. I didn't realize you were coming by so early, she said, smoothing her hair like she'd been caught off guard. I smiled politely. I texted Adam, just grabbing my coat. She followed me through the hallway like a shadow. Every step she took was measured, watching me like I might snoop through the silverware drawer. I reached for the coat closet, the same place it had always been, and it was empty. Not a single one of my jackets was there, not even the old denim one I used for gardening. I think I put your things in the garage, she said quickly. We did a bit of organizing the garage, of course. When I walked through it, I saw cardboard boxes labeled Mom's Stuff. My handwriting wasn't on them. Inside one was a stack of photo albums, ones I kept in my nightstand. Another box had my books, half of which were missing their jackets. The third box was sealed shut. That was the moment I felt it, not just suspicion, but confirmation. They were boxing me up, erasing me from the home. Quietly, Claire walked back in, rubbing her palms together. You know, she said, Adam and I were actually talking. If you're feeling a little isolated at your friend's place, maybe we could help you look into one of those retirement communities. There's one near the coast. It's supposed to be lovely. Her voice was sugar, but her eyes were steel. I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. A retirement community? I repeated softly. She smiled. Just something with other people your age. Activities. You'd love it. Other people my age, activities, as if I were a dog that needed to be walked and entertained. I left without another word. Driving away, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and rage. I knew Claire didn't say those things out of kindness. They were trying to gently, slowly, permanently push me out, not with arguments or cruelty, but with smiles, with locked doors, with relocation pamphlets disguised as compassion. I thought about David. What would he have done? Would he have seen it sooner? Would he have said something sharper, something I didn't know how to say? The next morning, I woke up before dawn, sat in the silence, and watched the sun rise through my friend's kitchen window. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't imagining it, and I wasn't going to be boxed up like a memory. That house was still mine. That home was my history, my years, my sweat, my tears, my joy, and my grief. They wanted to erase me from it quietly, cleanly, but I had a plan for me, a quiet one, the kind of quiet they would never see coming. It started with a plant, one of those cheap fake fiddle leaf figs from the hardware store. When I moved back in temporarily under the guise of sorting through the attic, I noticed it right away. It stood in the corner of the living room, stiff and shiny, pretending to belong, but I'd never bought it. It hadn't been there before. Claire wasn't much for decorating. Adam didn't know a fern from a fuss. I bent down to adjust the base out of habit, and that's when I saw it, a small red light, barely visible unless you were right up against it, blinking. I blinked at a camera hidden in the hollow of the fake plant, angled perfectly toward the couch. My hand froze midair. For a second, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was a sensor or an air freshener or some child monitoring gadget. But no, I knew what I was looking at. My heart didn't just drop, it folded in on itself, the kind of betrayal that doesn't even let you cry right away. You just go still. I didn't touch it. I backed away calmly, like someone leaving a crime scene. That evening, I waited until Adam left to run an errand. I knew Claire would be upstairs with Liam. She usually stayed up there for bath time and bedtime. I moved quickly, with quiet purpose. I'd raised a son, I knew how to tiptoe. The plant camera wasn't the only one. There was another one hidden inside the bookshelf, tucked between two fake encyclopedias, the kind no one actually reads, just displays. Another in the hallway, positioned in the vent, and one more in the kitchen, hidden behind a frosted glass spice jar that was always sealed shut. It felt like peeling wallpaper and finding mold underneath. Every corner of my home was watching me, recording, judging, collecting data I never agreed to give. I found the hub of it in the upstairs office, a locked cabinet. But Claire had left her keychain on the kitchen counter. I told myself it wasn't snooping, it was survival. Inside a sleek black router, labeled channels, micro SD cards were neatly organized by date. One labeled Guest Activity. I clicked it into the laptop, and there I was, making tea, talking to myself, folding laundry, crying at a commercial, sitting alone on the patio. Hundreds of clips, days' worth of footage. I didn't know whether to scream or throw up, but I kept watching. I had to know how far it went. There were videos of me in my bedroom, sitting on my bed in my nightgown, brushing my hair, reading, changing clothes, and then talking to David's photo, a habit I hadn't broken even 8 years after he died. There I was, whispering you'd be proud of them, I think. I hope I'm helping. And they had recorded it, archived it like a specimen. Why? Why would they do this? That's when I saw the file folder labeled Options. Inside were PDFs, not legal documents, not exactly property transfer forms, elder care facility brochures. That night, I stopped crying. I opened my notebook and started outlining a plan, not for revenge, but for clarity, for dignity, for freedom. They thought they could orchestrate my silence, bury me under paperwork and politeness, but I wasn't buried. I was rising. It was a Saturday when I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn them. I walked up the front steps just like I used to back when this house still felt like mine, back when Claire would greet me with fake warmth and Adam would mumble something about work. Claire opened the door with a bright smile that evaporated the second she saw my face. "Mom," she said, voice tightening we weren't expecting. "I know," I interrupted. "We need to talk." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Adam was in the kitchen. Liam was outside, playing with the neighbor's dog. I made sure of that. I didn't want him here for what was coming. I walked into the living room, stood right beneath the fake plant, and my eyes met Adam's. "Sit," I said. He frowned. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said, "but it's about to be." Claire stood in the doorway, arms folded tight across her chest. I took my time removing the manila folder from my bag, laying it flat on the coffee table. Inside were printed stills from the surveillance footage, photos of the hidden cameras, copies of the PDFs they thought I'd never see. I didn't say a word, I just flipped the pages one by one. The moment Claire saw her own handwriting on the transition timeline document, she sucked in a breath. Adam stared like a man trying to convince himself he wasn't caught red-handed. "What is this?" he asked too casually. "This," I said, "is everything you've been doing behind my back. Planning, watching, lying." He reached for one of the documents. I pulled it away. "These are copies. The originals are with my attorney, as are video files, emails, even the message where you called me an emotional liability." Claire stepped forward. "Look, this is a misunderstanding. We were just trying to help. You've been under stress since Dad died. You needed support. I needed respect." I snapped, not to be spied on, not to be erased from my own life. Adam rubbed his forehead. "Okay, maybe we went about it wrong, but it's not like we were trying to hurt you." "You were preparing to take everything from me," I said, voice low and steady. "You wrote up fake transfer documents. You priced out the house before I was even gone." He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Claire jumped in. "You don't understand how hard it's been for us. We've been juggling everything, Liam's school, the mortgage, our jobs. You living here wasn't simple and you were too loud." I cut her off. "Too emotional? Not convenient enough for your little domestic spreadsheet." That silenced her. "I opened my home to you when you needed a place. I offered help with Liam. I cooked, I cleaned, I gave you my time, my trust. And we're grateful," Claire muttered. No, you're not, I said. You were just waiting for me to become quiet enough to forget, old enough to remove, weak enough to sign away the last thing I own. Adam finally stood. So what now? You came here to shame us. No, I said, and this is when my voice changed, not louder, but colder, sharper. I came to tell you that I've transferred the house to a private trust, one you have no access to. I've updated my will. I filed a protective statement of intent. If either of you tries to touch the property again, my lawyer will pursue charges. Claire's mouth opened in disbelief. You're serious as death, I said, and unlike you, I know how to prepare for one. They both stared, stunned. I also pulled the plug on the utilities that were in my name. You'll be getting a call from the electric company Monday morning. Claire looked like she wanted to scream. Adam looked like he already had. Then I dropped the final blow. I know you've been using my name to leverage a loan application. The bank called to confirm some details. I told them to remove my information immediately. They were concerned. Adam sat down slowly, as if his legs couldn't hold him anymore. I picked up the folder and tucked it back in my bag. Claire spoke again, this time with a tremble. So that's it? You're just cutting us out. You already did that, I said. You just didn't expect me to notice. I paused and looked at Adam. I raised you to be better than this. He looked away. I'll be out of your way now, I said, but the house isn't yours, and it never will be. With that, I turned and walked out. There was no shouting, no last-minute apologies, no tearful confessions, just silence, the kind that only follows truth when it lands like a stone in still water. As I stepped outside, the sun hit my face. It felt new again, free not because I had one, but because I remembered who I was before they tried to erase me, and I chose her. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing I'd stayed too long. When I stepped off their porch that day, it wasn't just a physical exit. It was a full-body shedding of shame, of guilt, of the quiet, corrosive thought that maybe I had been too loud, too much, too inconvenient. I didn't look back. I drove straight to the small cottage on Ridgeview Drive, the one Marlene had found for me. 1 bedroom, a garden just big enough for tomatoes and lavender. Sunlight poured in through the front windows like it had been waiting just for me. I signed the lease that same afternoon, no discussion, no delay. My name, my space, my peace. The landlord handed me the keys with a smile, and as soon as the door closed behind me, I leaned against it and let out a laugh that turned into tears, not the bitter kind I'd wept in secret for months, but cleansing tears like rain after drought. The first thing I did was open the windows. Then I unpacked my teacups, the porcelain ones David had bought me on our anniversary in Santa Barbara. I placed them on the open kitchen shelves. Next to them, I set down the little ceramic bird Liam had painted when he was 4. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about curating the parts one wanted to keep. Back at the old house, I arranged for a moving company, not the cheapest, but discreet. They came early one morning while Adam and Claire were at work. I gave them a list. My clothes, my books, my photo albums, my rocking chair, and 1 antique mirror. That was it. I didn't want the rest. When I stood in my bedroom for the last time, that once wore. My room now revealed as a cage wrapped in pretense. I took one last look. The fake plant was still there, empty now. No more camera, but I left it. Let them wonder as the truck pulled away. I whispered goodbye. It wasn't bitter. It was finished. Over the next weeks, I began quietly rebuilding. I attended every meeting with my lawyer. We finalized the trust, filed a cease and desist to Adam and Claire regarding any use of my name or property. We also submitted evidence of attempted coercion and fraud to a family law advisor, not to destroy them, but to protect myself. I changed my phone number. I blocked their emails. Marlene came by every weekend with fresh flowers and stories from church gossip. We laughed more than I thought possible. Didn't think you had it in you, she teased one day, sipping lemonade. You were always the quiet one. Maybe, I said, smiling, or maybe I just got loud at the right time. There were days I missed Liam, his laughter, The way he'd run to show me his drawings or tell me about his day at school. I wrote him a letter, simple and warm, no blame, no bitterness. I left it with a trusted neighbor and asked her to deliver it on his birthday. He deserved to remember love, not tension. As for Adam and Claire, they didn't reach out, not once. I didn't expect them to. I no longer needed closure from them. Closure, I learned, was something I could give myself. I joined a book club at the local library, started taking long walks, picked up Tai Chi at the park every Tuesday morning, and I began writing. Not memoirs, not a tell-all, just little reflections, observations on how the world changes when you take back the pen and stop letting others write your story. One afternoon, I sat on my new porch, drinking tea from the blue porcelain cup, and a butterfly landed on my hand. It sat there for a second, delicate, steady. I smiled. It felt like David saying, "You did good." I whispered back, "I know. The mornings here feel different." The first thing I notice is the quiet, not the strange silence of that old house, where every word was measured and every step felt like trespassing. No, this is a gentle quiet, the kind that wraps around you like a soft quilt. The wind here carries the scent of pine and distant jasmine. When I open the window, sunlight spills across the hardwood floors like honey. Every morning, I brew my tea in the blue porcelain cup and sit on the front steps with a blanket over my shoulders. I watch the neighborhood slowly wake up. There's a girl across the street who walks her golden retriever in a bright pink hoodie, a boy who rides past on his bike with a neon green helmet that's just a little too big. They wave. Now I wave back. There's something deeply healing about being seen again, not as a burden, not as a role, but as a person, just me. I've filled this space with soft things, woven rugs, linen curtains, second-hand books with underlined sentences from strangers. I painted the kitchen yellow, not because it was trendy, but because it reminded me of sunflowers and lemons. On pie in the kitchen in my childhood home, I started keeping fresh herbs on the windowsill: basil, mint, rosemary. Every Sunday, I bake not for anyone else, just for me. Peach cobbler, cinnamon rolls, rosemary bread with a thick crust. It's funny, I used to cook to please others. Now, I cook because it brings me joy. The smell of cinnamon filling the small space makes me feel like everything is going to be okay. There are no cameras here, no whispers behind closed doors, no locked drawers or fake smiles, only plants, books, and the occasional squirrel who tries to steal my tomatoes. I keep a journal on the nightstand. Each page is a quiet conversation with myself. Sometimes I write about my garden, other times about memories of David, of Liam as a baby, of long drives along the coast with the windows down and Fleetwood Mac playing on the radio. One page simply says, "You were never too loud. They were just too afraid to hear the truth." I've made new friends too, real ones. People who don't look at me like I'm fragile or fading. People who listen when I speak and laugh without hesitation. There's Margie from the book club, who once dyed her hair purple on a dare and never changed it back. There's Talia, who teaches a pottery class and swears by peppermint tea for everything from heartbreak to migraines. We meet every Thursday at the cafe by the lake. They call me Ems now, not mom, not mother-in-law, just Ems, and it feels good, like I've stepped back into my skin after years of wearing something that never quite fit. Some evenings, I walk down to the edge of the water and sit with my feet in the sand. I bring a little folding chair and a blanket, watch the ducks float past, listen to the wind moving through the reeds. I bring my notebook too. I write letters I'll never send, some to Adam, some to myself. One night, I wrote, "Forgiveness doesn't always come with a reunion. Sometimes it's just setting the pain down and walking away lighter." I don't know if Adam and Claire ever talk about me. I don't know if they still try to justify what they did. I don't really care. That part of the story is done now. The story is about me, a woman who survived betrayal, yes, but more than that, a woman who remembered how to love herself without permission. Who realized that being too much for some people just means you're finally enough for yourself. Sometimes I catch myself humming in the kitchen, dancing while folding laundry, laughing at my own jokes. There's a mirror in the hallway, and when I pass it, I see someone strong, not hardened, just solid, grounded, whole. I never thought peace could feel this rich, not fancy, not perfect, just warm and mine. Last week, I planted daffodils in the backyard. When I finished, I stood there, covered in dirt, hair in a messy bun, and smiled at the little yellow bulbs nestled into the soil. In time, they'll bloom just like I did. I used to think love meant staying quiet, staying agreeable, staying even when it hurt. But I've learned that love, real love, should ever feel like a performance? Sometimes the ones who claim to love us the most are the ones who try to control us. They wrap their expectations in kindness, their manipulation in duty. They tell you it's for your own good, that you're just too much or too loud or too difficult, and you start to believe them. But here's the truth. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to raise your voice. You are allowed to walk away when love starts to look like surveillance instead of safety. The day I left wasn't the day I lost a family. It was the day I found myself again. It was quiet and unceremonious, just a woman locking a door behind her and stepping into the unknown. But in that small moment, I took back everything they tried to chip away. My dignity, my independence, my right to peace. Now I wake up to sunlit windows and the smell of rosemary in the air. No judgment, no secrets, just soft mornings and quiet evenings and a steady growing sense that I'm exactly where I need to be. To anyone watching who feels stuck, like you're walking on eggshells in a house that's supposed to feel like home, I hope you hear this. You are not imagining it. You are not the problem, and you are not alone. Freedom, once taken back, is the most beautiful kind of peace. And now I'll ask you this. If you discovered someone was watching your every move, what would you do? Let me know in the comments because your story matters.